We gather in the cosmos bright. Stars and ships take flight tonight. In the void where dreams do play, soul citizens lead the way. Borders fade in nebula's light. Unknown worlds will chart tonight. Through the galaxy we soar. Endless journeys at our core. Borders fade in nebula's light. Unknown worlds will chart tonight. Through the galaxy we soar. Endless journeys at our core. Starry roads in endless skies. Soul citizens we rise. Charting courses never lost. Together the verses crossed. Squadrons call on the horizon. Battles fought, our hearts aren't frightened. In our ships we face the dawn. Soul citizens carry on. Oh, planets spin and light years fly. Boundless space where hopes reside. Brotherhood in every star. Soul citizens, here we are. Borders fade in nebula's light. Unknown worlds will chart tonight. Through the galaxy we soar. Endless journeys at our core. Starry roads in endless skies.
Turn off the family room.
Citizens we rise. Charting courses never lost. Together the verses crossed.
Hey, greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome to Soul Citizens. It is the year 2025 and we are back. We've been on hiatus, we've been away, but we are back and we are so glad to be back with you, the Star Citizen community and the Soul Citizens community. And we are joined with two very special guests that are joining us today, helping us kick off our new year, talking about some old things and some new things, hopefully. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it. I want to introduce, first of all, our guests. We have two. Some of them, these may be people that you guys have seen before. If not, they're rising stars in the Star Citizen community. Starting off with, to my right, the one and the only, Grolo. Grolo, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Good. We're happy to have you on. Glad you're able to be here today with us. And to my left, the one and the only SirSilverstar. How are you?
I'm great. How's everyone?
Good.
For the opportunity.
Yeah, we are happy to have these two gentlemen on with us today. You might be wondering, what do these guys have to do with this particular topic? Well, I almost forgot to introduce somebody. That's how rusty it's been, guys. It's been 3 weeks, okay? Let's introduce my good friend, my partner, Fastcart FC. How are you, buddy?
Last and certainly.
Yeah.
FC, I hope everybody's having a good time. I hope everybody had a good holiday. Happy New Year, everybody.
That's very true. That's very true. I forgot because you've been back on. You've been on Thursday. I've been away for a little while now, about mid-December. So it's not just me. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad to know that. Well, listen. What?
My volume is low, so maybe I gotta turn.
Oh, is it? Okay. No, it may not be you. It might be more on me than you. So let me see what I need to do to adjust. Okay. Hang on a second, guys. We're gonna crank up Fastcart. Give us a 1-2, Fastcart.
1 2 1 2.
How's that, guys? Is that better? One more time, guys.
1 2 1 2.
Hello.
Really? Still low? Better? Getting better?
Maybe I got an overdrive for you, Griffin, but sound fine.
Well, you know what? Hold on a second. No, like I said, we've been gone for a little while. Everybody's low. Ooh. Okay, hang on. I can fix this. I can fix it. Try now. FC.
Testing 1 2 1 2.
Talk deep. Yeah, talk normal. Is that better?
Okay, talk normal. This is my normal speaking voice.
Is that better, guys? Much better. Mucho better. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, guys. See, we have a great community. They let us know before our videos go out whether they're going to be worth listening to later on. Okay, so let's get back to the topic here. Our show today is called The Long and Winding Road. And again, we have our guests, Grolo and SirSilverstar, on with us to help us with this conversation. And we picked this title because for many of us, we've been on this long and winding road with the development of Star Citizen. And so we thought we would bring on two people who happen to work in the software industry to give us some insights, give us their thoughts, but they're also backers of Star Citizen. They played the game. And so we're going to give you a little bit about them, let them share themselves, a little bit of bio about themselves, talk about their history with the game, and then we're going to get into some topics. So hopefully you guys will really enjoy the topic that we're doing for this week. Grolo, I'm going to start with you since you're between me and fastcart. You get the dice fall first. Let folks know a little bit about you, your stream, what it is you do, and then we could talk about your interest in Star Citizen too.
Yeah, sure. I'm a system architect by trade. I've been doing software development for, I don't know, over 24 years now. I hate saying that number. I also lead a gaming community, and I've been playing Star Citizen since 3.17 when one of the people in our community got me to try it for the first time, and I've been hooked ever since.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, what was the first ship that got you into this game?
I think the first ship we flew was a Cutlass Black.
Ah, okay. Cutty Black. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong there. All right.
No.
All right.
Can't go wrong.
Okay. SilverStar, how about you? Give us a little background about yourself and also how you came into Star Citizen.
So I am a software engineer. Graduated from Arizona State University back in 2019. And mostly what I do now is some web development, mostly centered around building tools for Twitch streamers. So I mostly build stuff for myself. I did a bit of web dev and system building for a startup that my parents wanted to do, so I did some of that for a few years. Okay. And what got me into Star Citizen was, like Grolo, a friend, pulled me into the game. I want to say it was during one of the Free Fly events. And he brought me in his Connie most of the time. And my first ship, whenever I pledged, was a cutter.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm not sure about this. Like, I pledged for it back in September 2023, and I didn't really play the game much, and then I'm like, I really like cargo running. So then I moved to a 315P back in June and loved the ship, and have been playing since June, much more seriously.
Nice. Man after my own origin guy. Love it. There's a little running joke about my origin stuff on this guy, so bear with me with that. Well, that's great. It's great to hear you guys' backgrounds. And we want to make it clear. These gentlemen, though they have software development experience, they are not game developers, and they make that very clear in their videos. But they will share some insights that comes from that industry that we think might be helpful. And of course, as always, if you guys want to ask questions, use the little ellipse down at the bottom, the little eclipse thing there, and you can put questions in there, and we will give them an opportunity to respond to some of the questions you guys have. But we've got 10 questions for them ourselves. So hopefully we'll ask some of the questions that you guys will be interested in. FC, real quick, we haven't had a lot of opportunity to hear from people who work in the industry for the most part. Is that right? I'm speaking about in general. Are there a lot of people that you know in the community that we've had? Every once in a while we get somebody, but we don't get a lot of people, right?
Somebody sometimes, but I mean, we have a couple of here and there who hang out in Discord, but not on Soul Citizen. No.
Yeah. So this is our first time actually having some folks in. So we're going to go jump right into it for you guys. And one of the things we're going to start with is how the end of 2024 ended, which was the letter for the chairman. Some of you guys know that we just put out a video just recently, the producers did, that talked about resolution, evolution, and how we're looking at the year 2025. But we want to find out from both Grolo and SilverStar, and SilverStar will start with you on this one. After getting a chance, did you get a chance to look at the letter from the chairman? And if so, based on where you see the game in its development process now, maybe the history that you know about, how did you feel about that letter in the sense of where CIG says they want to put their focus now in relation to developing Star Citizen?
So I read the letter not long before the podcast, and I was very pleased with the idea that they're going to split development between two essentially live sections of the game. So like whenever they have bigger, more risky areas of the game that need to be developed, that they keep that separate, and then they have a more stable live area for folks like myself that generally just kind of want to play the game and make content versus, wanting to rigorously test the game.
Yeah.
So that's probably my biggest point that I took away from that. Also, the idea that they're finally going to start, hopefully, focusing on the stability of the game, because that's kind of the biggest issue that I have personally.
Yeah.
The game is like, you have such a ambitious project that is being held up like a stack of, a house of cards. And that concerns me.
Yeah. Yeah. Grolo, I'll throw the same question to you. Letter for the chairman. Your thoughts after reading it, and what do you think about the direction CIG is looking at going now?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised at all whenever I saw the message come out. I had said a couple weeks back, I forget which video it even was, but I was talking about kind of like why these games are taking so long and some of the decisions that go into release dates and that type of thing. And one of the things I brought up was whenever Squadron 42 lands, like they are going to want the MMO Star Citizen to be in a place to maximize how much interest they can capture from that Squadron 42 launch. And I think like the kind of people that are going to buy Squadron 42 are not the kind of people that are going to be interested in playing an MMO in the state that Star Citizen's in today. So it makes sense to me that they're choosing this time to focus on playability and bug crushing and that kind of thing, so that in 2 years or a year and a half, whatever, like they're saying Squadron 42 in 2026. So I'm just assuming 2 years, end of 2026. We might see it at the end of 2026, like so that by then Star Citizen is in a place that they can really maximize what they're able to pull from that launch.
Okay. Fastcart. I know you've been to the Acme School of Game Developing. What were your feelings about Star Citizen? For the chairman.
Yes, that's me. I was surprised. I anticipate see a two-prong path, like with 3.24.3 and 4.0. So that took me off guard. I'm like, oh, okay. I thought it was just going to go straight to 4.0 like normal, but I don't know if they're going to. I don't know if they're going to continue doing this. Or maybe they said it in letter, but I forget. But yeah, that took me by surprise. But I'm glad it did it, because there's a lot of issues with 4.0, and some people had issues with 3.4 and 3, and haven't finished certain achievements or missions that they wanted to do before 4.0 came out. So I'm glad they did it, but I'm just surprised. And it's good, because I would not have expected this, like 5 years ago, this would have been unimaginable, because I don't think CIG had the structure or server capacity to handle this, but I'm glad that they do now.
People have been asking for quite a while, guys. It has come up before in conversations of why doesn't CIG run something that kind of remains stable? Like once they get the patches to a fairly stable point, maybe it's a 23.3 or 0.4, and the game is playing fairly well. Why don't they just leave that running? And then when they have the new patch that's got all the craziness in it, have that run. Because as you guys know, what they'll usually do is eventually that other patch dies, they put it away, and then we're just on one particular patch. Do you think that it's best for CIG to continue to run like continuously? And I know that there's some financial issues. Maybe you guys can talk about that. Running, a live service and a PTU service continually. Do you think that would give players those options? Or do you think that there are reasons why they have to go down to one server because they need as much analytics and information and data as possible. Grolo, I'll go to you on that. And you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the more environments that you create, the more difficult it's going to be to get the analytics you're looking for. I think that's why they probably haven't had like a stabler branch and a more bleeding edge branch. I mean, we already kind of have that between PTU and live, but if we introduce more live versions that kind of offer people the stability they're looking for, I think that's kind of counter to what the point of an alpha is. That's where I stand on it.
Okay. SirSilverstar, your thoughts?
That makes some sense. And, like I said before, like there's folks like myself that do just kind of want to play the game versus vigorously testing it. But because this is an alpha, we really should push the testing as much as we can. Plus, running more environments like that, you run a risk of having much more bloat than what you currently have. So, really, if people are already used to the idea of testing in production, which is basically what we've been doing this whole time, just for the expense, maybe just roll with it until, we can get something that is relatively stable from patch to patch. I think once they work on the core functionality of pushing those bugs that are, the most prevalent across all those the patches, I think you'll have much more of a smoother experience.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah. Is there a psychological thing here? I'll share with you what I mean. When 4.0 launched, and I'm one of those people that when 4.0 launched, my attitude was I'm looking forward to it, but I know it's going to introduce another level of issues and it's going to take time for them to get through that. And even though when it first launched, it was obviously not running as efficiently as CIG would have wanted it or as much as we would have wanted it, I never went back to playing 323.2. Even though they had the the thing for Stanton going on and all these other things, I had no more interest in that patch. And I know that there were some people at that time were even saying, well, you can always go back and play 323 and do the thing for Stanton if you want. But once the new thing came out, I didn't. Maybe it's the old gamer in me because I just don't want to have that bouncing between two things and try to remember two different gameplays. Once that new one came out, that's where I stayed, even when it was worse than the previous patch. So is that a factor, too, that players, how do you say where players are going to put their emphasis? Is it going to be split 50-50? Is it 70-30? Is it 30 one day and 70 another day? I mean, do those create more complications, in the long run for the developer? And whichever one you guys want to respond to that, feel free.
I think it does split the community in unintended ways. For me, like I'm like you, as soon as 4.0 hit, I just dropped 324. Because I'm like, if 324 is going to get deprecated and removed and I lose everything, what's the point? So that's why
from a progression standpoint, you looked at like, you didn't want to put the energy into that patch, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
See, for me, it wasn't even about progression. I lost interest. You know what I mean? For me, it was more of we're moving to the next thing now. You know what I mean? Even though the other one was more stable, Yeah. Yeah. But I get the progression thing. Believe me. I get it. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I think the way they rolled out 4.0 made sense only because, first of all, the time of year, like they knew they didn't want to keep people in the office at that time of year, right? They want people to go home, spend time with their families. And so like if there was a meltdown in 4.0, at least people had something to log into. Now, the fact is there wasn't a complete meltdown. Like it was running well enough that we were still interested in logging into 4.0 and not 3.2.8. But like, had you not been able to log into 4.0 at all, would you have played 3.2?
Yeah, probably.
Whatever it was?
Yeah, probably then. Yeah, I would have. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why it made sense. But given that we didn't run into that, it kind of felt like, what was the point?
Yeah, I was willing to push through 4.0 and its wackiness, even though the other one was available to me, like you said. Okay.
For
FC.
me, coming from the Acme school, I was thinking the difference for me was between old and busted and new hotness. So yeah, I was not looking at 323.4 anymore after 4.0 came out.
Well, there'll be some people who would have said old and busted and new and busted too, right? So, depending on how you want to look at it, right? FC, do me a favor. Give me a little more audio on your mic. I know you were adjusting earlier, just a little bit more. Okay. Okay, let's move on, guys. Software development cycle. Grolo, I'll start with you this time on this one. This project, I'm one of those people who's been around for over 10 years. I started looking at it in 2012, but I jumped into it in 2013, 2014. I was ignorant of what it meant to be in what CIG at that time was calling a pre-alpha. I didn't know what that was. And I really didn't know completely what alpha was. I knew it was an early stage of development. And obviously, without using too many brain cells, I knew it was before beta, which I was familiar with, right? And I want to tie this into on you guys' sheets 3, 2, and 4, so we can combine this a little bit. Can you tell folks a little bit about that process? What does pre-alpha mean? Does it mean the same in every type of software development industry, or is it defined by that particular genre of gaming? So, in other words, is software development in, let's say, medicine, is pre-alpha different in there than it would be in gaming, or are they virtually the same when someone says somewhere software is in a pre-alpha stage?
That's a good question. I've been doing this a long time, and at no point in my career have I used the monikers of alpha, beta, pre-alpha. So I strictly, I can't say never. Beta might be something that we've used for a short term, like we'll call it beta, like whenever we're doing like a pre-production, like kind of screening for a customer or something, like, hey, here's a beta version, test it out, but it won't last more than a week or two. So at least from my perspective, like this whole alpha, pre-alpha, alpha, beta, this definitely is more of a gaming industry terminology. Okay. And so. Okay.
Is it so? What do you call, like, when somebody's first sitting down with pencil and paper and trying to figure out what it is that you're trying to achieve? Are there certain stages in the process of developing software?
Yeah, for sure. It's like you'll start out with a pencil and paper or whatever, and you'll call that a mock-up. Like, we're just kind of visually representing what we're going to be building here. From there, you kind of go into just an early development process where you're not really producing much of anything that anybody outside of the development team can interact with. You're going to be kind of rapidly prototyping. So you're in the prototype stage where you're just kind of doing like proof of concepts. Like, if I want to do this, will this work? If I want to do that, will that work? At this point, you're really just writing tests and kind of doing like automated validation of your ideas. And then from there, you'll go into something like, you'll start iterating through like there's something that we call like Semver. It's a way of versioning software. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen software that's like 0.1.0 or 0.1. Even SC does, or Star Citizen CIG uses this nomenclature. But like there's actually meaning behind those numbers in software development. Like, where like the last number will usually represent how many bug fixes you've done. The second number is like, hey, we've added a new feature. The first number is like breaking changes. So like when you go from 1 to 2, it means your software has broken backwards compatibility in some way. When you go from like 2.0 to 2.1, it means, oh, we've added features in this version. And when you go from 2.1 to 2.11, it means, oh, we fixed a bug, nothing else has changed. So that's kind of like the versioning that I'm used to in my field.
A quick question.
Yeah.
Do you believe the Star Citizen patch numbering system causes confusion among the backers or developers or people in general?
That's a good question. Like, I can't map the way they version numbers to anything that I'm aware of. I think those numbers are purely marketing driven, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I don't know that it confuses. I think whether or not what the backers understand those numbers to mean and what CIG understands those, I don't know if that's the same. Because I think everybody knows when we go from 2 point something to 3 point something, we look at it as there's some major leap in what they're doing. When we get a 0.1 to a 0.2, we know some new features are coming in. But once we get 0.2, 0.3, point whatever, to us, that's just another patch. That's that we don't see features necessarily. But CIG has done that where they've introduced some new content into a point, the third decimal before too. Yeah. So it's kind of weird. Yeah, but that's informative of you telling us that that's how the structure would, in general, be represented in the industry. Yeah. Let me go to SilverStar here a little bit too about the pre-alpha and whether or not he has any thoughts about and let me ask you this, SilverStar, based on what Grolo was just saying. I always looked at alpha as kind of being somewhere around like concept, pre-concept, where things are being not spaghetti thrown on the wall, but here are some things that we want to do. Let's see how they work. We used to have a thing in the game, and I know you guys weren't around back then, but we had one of our first mission givers, and you may have heard about it, was a voice. It was called Tessa Bannister. And what you would do is fly to this space station, and as you approached it, she would come on, like she'd call you like a radio transmission, and then you would acknowledge, and then she would say, this is what I need you to go do. And I always saw that as a test of proof of concept for a mission giver. Now, she's been gone for how many years, fastcart? Probably 8 years, maybe 7-8 years. Yeah. But later on, that came into fruition as what we would get later as far as our mission givers who are in the game. So would that have been considered proof of concept, them putting in something like that, SilverStar, like just simple voice that gives us a mission?
I mean, I would call that more of like prototyping something. But
okay.
Yeah, I mean, proof of concept would be a good term for it.
Okay.
But as far as like alpha, pre-alpha, and the kinds of stuff that I do, like I'm with Grolo, like that kind of doesn't come up with what I do. If I can't say beta or release, you just don't see it.
Okay.
So, and even then, I most of the time don't even do beta because, like, I kind of have to test in production with the things that I do most of the time. Because what I do is building tools for Twitch, and so I test on my own stream with what I do, and then if it works out, then if somebody else wants to use it, they can use it. But yeah, essentially, if it's in a prototype stage or if it's conceptualized with the kinds of things that I do, you just don't see it.
Okay, that's fair.
Maybe a good way to think about it is like I'm sure everybody has smartphones, and I don't know if anybody has done this, but like if you have an iPhone or something, I know Apple provides a way for you to opt into like beta releases. Even like your Chrome web browser will do this, right? Like they'll allow you to opt into beta releases. Right. That's kind of where outside of the gaming industry, that's where most of these monikers begin. Like you're either in beta or you're in production. Anything before beta in our industry is usually just kind of considered like insider. Like the inside developers are working on, I guess that alpha would be before beta, but that's never exposed to the outside world.
Okay. Fastcart, you got anything you want to ask about the alpha, beta, delta, whatever, gamma?
No, I got my question in earlier.
No?
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so let me ask this question in relation. This is just, and I know, guys, I know we're working within the confines of the industries that you guys work in. When you read the letter from the chairman, and we also saw the letter that we saw earlier last year when Chris Roberts wrote the last letter, when it was him and Richard Tyrer, and they were talking about moving toward 1.0. Right. And they said when 1.0 launches, they want to be a viable, stable game that people will come back to and play regularly. Do you think that the 4.0 period will be what some would consider beta? And I know Star Citizen isn't supposed to have like a finishing point per se, because they're going to continue to build on it, hopefully for years and years to come. But there is that point of 1.0 where they want the game to be, this is where the game is, we're not testing anymore. This is the game. Will the 4.0 period start to become what would be considered beta for that stage?
Well, if they continue on the path that they set forth, I mean, I could see that. I don't know if I would call this game as an alpha as they say it is. Like, yeah, there's a lot of broken stuff, but like, I think that they throw the word alpha around a little too loosely with this project. But that's just me. Grolo, I'd be curious what you think about it.
I've been saying for a while. Sorry, go ahead, fastcart.
No, real quick. If you say that they throw the term alpha around too much, what term would you prefer that they use?
Well,
none.
it's one of those things. It's like, just in my mind, alpha is a very small group of people that work on the thing and are developing, like, finishing off the major core functionality so that the beta testers can come in and stress test it. So in my mind, this is a little closer to beta than alpha, but I might be a little biased here.
Okay, that's fair. Were you going to say Grolo?
I think that's a fair way of looking at it. If you're comparing, if you're looking at Star Citizen like a traditional software product, I think where my mind falls is kind of like what we were just talking about. Like if you're opting into a beta Chrome release or iOS release or something like that, and you consider anything but or Windows, and if you consider anything prior to that, alpha, which would be in the realm of like the internal developers within the company, if you think of Star Citizen and its funding model and the way that like we are all participating in that internal developer phase, then maybe the alpha terminology makes sense, because like what we're playing today is what would normally be only for internal developers, but because Star Citizen's being built in the open, like this is what we have. yeah.
Togi, go ahead.
To go back to you had asked the question about like when beta might make sense. I think with this announcement that like this year is going to be a focus on playability, like I think if they execute on that well over the next year or two, I think that may bring us to beta territory. I'd be curious to know if like 4.0 will be the last version before 1.0 beta.
Well, that was my next question I was going to say, because there's a lot of assumptions that it's 4.0 then 1.0, but Togi mentions in chat that, and people have said this, maybe there will be a 5.0, maybe a 6.0. I know CIG, there's always the marketing side of all this, right? CIG, if CIG came out today and said, oh, there's going to be a 6.0, there'd be people like, I'm out of here, right? I'm out of here. But then again, if 4.0 is it, they can't say that either, right? I mean, they can't just conclusively say that. It's somewhat implied because they started talking about 1.0. Usually they have talked about other versions later, but they put out this big letter about our road to 1.0. Now, there was a road to Pyro, too, that took a lot longer than expected, right?
Yeah.
So it may not be a 5.0, but maybe there'll be a 4.1 or 4.5. Or when we started back in the day, fastcart will tell you, at the presentation in 2016, it was 3.0 to 3.9, right? And we're at 3.24, right? Yep. So I think we should kind of keep the possibilities of the fact that it doesn't mean that 4.0 will be the last version, but it doesn't mean that it won't. We'll have to see what they do.
It might be just me, but for me, it felt like what they're talking about in the Citizen card, there will be 4.x branches and then 1.0. But
that's what it felt like. But again, that's feeling, right? That's feeling. And I agree with you. And don't get me wrong. I'm saying it felt like it, but it doesn't mean. And it's very easy for us to feel that way because, to be honest with you, subconsciously, that's what we want, right? We don't want to think about a 5.0 or a 6.0. And I'm not saying that there will or won't be, but it is something that we have to take into consideration. Let's jump to this next topic here. SilverStar, I'll go to you on this one. Boy, something that we've all said. I don't think there's anybody in Star Citizen who hasn't either said or felt this next question. Why don't they fix such and such? I just watched a video just recently where someone was saying, there's issues with getting into the game right now, but it seemed like CIG put priorities on the ship duping instead of working on making it easier for people to get into the game. And don't get me wrong, from a rational point of view that makes sense. The one thing that CIG does say to us is that as backers, you have access to the game. And if you don't have access to the game, well, that's part of the problem. That's a real problem, because part of my purpose for backing is so that I can get in and try things out and test things. But if I can't do that, then that is a real problem. But is it as easy as that? That's my question to you guys. Because sometimes things seem like it shouldn't be a big deal to fix. But maybe you guys can talk about, are there complexities to things that might seem very simple when it comes to fixing things in the game? And I'll start with you, SilverStar, on that.
Yeah, there's absolutely complexity for things like this. And for me, I'm always saying, why can't they just fix the elevators?
Right. Yeah,
That's number
one vote.
I'm like, if the number of times that I've opened an elevator and I almost fall to the abyss because I just reflexively go forward, I'm like, there's nothing there. Yeah, that's ridiculous. But there's...
You have the congregation saying amen and hallelujah to you right now. Can't anymore.
But yeah, there's so much going on with a huge system like this that it seems clearer and clearer, to me at least, as development goes on, that certain systems are tied very tightly with other systems, such that as soon as you touch one thing, you're messing with something else way off in left field that you don't even know is being affected. And this is, considering how big and complex this thing is, having it, to me it seems, I've never looked at the code, I probably never will, but to me things seem very tightly coupled. And what we mean by that in software is you have something called separation of concerns, where you have something that is, this is only supposed to handle this one thing, and if you pull it out, it can, it can break something, but it shouldn't break the entire system. And then there's what you have, it's called tight coupling, is where one thing depends on the next thing, depends on the next thing, depends on the next thing, and you just start tying everything together in such a way where as soon as you touch one thing, there's ripples, 10 features down the line that you can't even expect.
Yeah.
And so fixing the elevator might mean that ships never turn on again, or that the elevator will get there every time, but it might send you from Crusader to Microtech. So it isn't quite as simple as just make the elevator work. It's depending on how the system is designed and how things are connecting to each other determines how hard or easy it is to fix. And depending on the timelines that they have on them, they might be pushed to just make it work, which does make things more tightly coupled because that's just easier to do in the moment.
Yeah. Grolo, I watched one of your videos, and I'm sorry, I can't recall which one, because I think it was one of the very first one I watched of yours, and you brought out your whiteboard and you did some numbers and stuff and talked about the complexity of what CIG is doing. And I think sometimes we don't realize that the simplest things, when they're working, are also very complex to make happen. And what I mean by that is something as simple as, and I'm using this as in quotes, something as simple as the elevator seems like it shouldn't be a big deal. I've always argued, my folks here have heard me argue this point. The fact that Chris Roberts has these certain things that he wants physicalized, some people take the perspective that it's being done out of vanity, where I often kind of say, no, I think there's probably something more to it than what we may understand, like the trams, why certain things are physicalized. Why is there such an effort to make sure that these elevators do this? And Am I wrong in that? Is it because you would think that let's just make the elevators work for people. We'll 50% of the griping we're getting from the community will disappear. People can ride trains and elevators well, but they haven't been addressed. And we know that in 4.0, they were originally on the list of items that were going to be a new version 2.0 or whatever was going to come out for trams and transportation elevators. Is it the fact that something as simple as this, that we would think is simple, the level of complexity, as SilverStar was saying, how we could break other things by that, but this whole idea of physicalizing, is that much more complicated than maybe we think things are?
I think that definitely complicates things. It's also one of the most impressive things about the game, and I think what kind of astounds people who are playing it for the first time. And anytime I bring somebody into the game for the first time, and you kind of get that jaw drop, like holy! I think most of that is because of the physicalization, like the fact that you can lower the hatch on a Cuddy Black and drive a rock up into it. Like there's just no other game where you can do it, and all of that is because of the physicalization. And I think some people call it like the sacred cow. I don't know, but I think there's good reason for it, and I think it's tied to CR and CIG's quest for that emergent gameplay. Like the more things that exist in the reality of this verse, like the more opportunity there is to add mechanisms down the line to build on top of this. Like if you just have a magic box that you walk into and it teleports you to somewhere else in the game, the opportunity to add things to that later down the road is basically non-existent. You now have to build this thing out. Same with like a tram. Imagine if you just kind of walked into a tram and there was a loading screen and then you showed up in another city, like you can't really add on to that. But like the physicalized trams that we have, maybe CIG wants to introduce a train wreck down the road. Like that's now a lot easier to do because we have a physicalized transport system.
If I'm remembering correctly, Grolo, you said something. I don't want to lose my track. Fastcart, give me a second. Don't forget what you're going to say. I think, I don't know if it was Grolo or SilverStar, one of you all's videos I watched, and one of you made a statement about how when you're doing software development at this stage, you don't close the loop completely at the end. You have to leave some room. I can't remember how it was phrased, but there's something like when you're working, you know what I'm talking about, Grolo?
That was me. I created the analogy to a piece of IKEA furniture. Whenever you're putting it together. Yeah. Like you don't want to tighten one screw and then tighten the next, right? You leave slack in all of them, and then you kind of go around and do that final pass where you tighten everything. I think that's a good analogy. Software development.
And why is that? Let's talk about the repercussions if you do tighten that screw because you think that we're done with this. What happens when you do that too soon?
I was talking about that in the context of optimizations. Right. So like trying to get systems to perform faster, better, more. But often there's something in software development called premature optimization. That's it. Whenever you optimize something, you are often gaining speed at the cost of rigidity. And by rigidity, I mean like the system becomes less flexible. Because you've optimized it to operate faster in a certain way. And so like at this early stage in your alpha where things are changing and kind of in flux, like the last thing you want to do is reduce the flexibility of any system, right? So that's what I was talking about there. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. All right.
Fastcart, what were you going to say? There was something you wanted to toss out there.
No, I was going to say, I remember when they stopped iterating on hangers, the first version of hangers, what do you call them, the hanger module. When they stopped iterating on them, and it got worse and worse and worse with every patch. Because I was the type of person, I would come in every patch, after every reset, and redecorate my hangers, because that's the thing I love about Star Citizen. I thought it was cool. I love looking at my ships and my personal hangers. But it got to the point where if you summon a ship, it would spawn damage, you couldn't get into a ship, and then finally they said, okay, we're going to stop. Take away the hanger module for a while, but it'll be back. And it took them about 2-3 years before they bring it back. When they sold it to the new personal hanger, the first thing they showed was that it had an elevator in it. I mean, the old hangar had an elevator, but it was just a passenger elevator, go up and down between levels. This one was going to be one to summon my ship. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I was worried. I was like, uh-oh. If we had trouble with hangars now, what's going to happen when we have to use our hangar to summon our ship? And for the most part, it does work. But we do have issues every now and then.
Thracazox, thank you so much for the sub. Appreciate that. And the resub earlier. I missed that earlier. Thank you so much. And Iceman, thank you for the follow as well. Appreciate you guys being here today. 100 Spacebucks from Martin Miggs. I missed that too. Oh my God. Thank you, Martin. We appreciate that. Awesome. So I'll ask you guys this question is why don't they fix a statement of frustration? Is it a statement of, let's use, and we'll talk about the elevators. They've been this way forever. I know for those people who are mining, you'd go out to mine a rock and you'd scan it and then you'd get there and it'd be empty. There'd be nothing there. How do you, in this stage, are these fair questions to ask? And I'm not saying that I understand the frustration from asking the question, but if this game, and I know SirSilverstar, you said about them using the term alpha loosely, but if we're in this stage of alpha, when does it get to a point where that phrase really, okay, guys, you've been saying that for X number of years. We should be past that. Is that a point where the community is fair to be at, or is it a situation where as long as it's called alpha, hey, that's what it is, and 5 years or 15 years, that's what alpha is? Where do you guys feel when it comes to that?
Happy to go first.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I think I think as long as it's alpha, it's fair to be crummy. If and this might be an unpopular take, but if you look at other big productions, what was another Throne of Liberty was another MMO that just came out. That was in development for 12 years. Same as what Star Citizen has been, and a lot smaller scope, right? So first of all, I don't think the Star Citizen timeline is excessive when compared to other products launching. And second of all, if we are truly an alpha, keep in mind that this would normally be what is behind closed doors and only seen by internal development teams. And I can guarantee you that internal development teams would be putting up with this. The fact that elevators are constantly bugged out, or I'm falling off the trams because it's sliding off the tracks. An internal development team would not prioritize that. They would just put up with it because they know that some other system is coming online and they need to wait for that before they can fix this. A good example is server meshing. They've indicated that server meshing is in some way tied to the transit system, and so they were kind of waiting on server meshing to come online so that they could re-implement meshing on top of, or transit on top of that. And so those things make sense to me, and it's how I would expect a project of my own to go.
Okay. SirSilverstar, any thoughts?
So I'm with Grolo here that as long as you can justify the alpha moniker of it, yeah, I can see that. But just for conversation purposes, Grolo, let me pose the question from a non-developer, or maybe just a super casual player's perspective. From a super casual player's perspective, they don't really understand the development cycle, and what they're probably seeing is CIG has raised $7 million and the elevators don't work, and they've not worked for how many years now? And so how can you and I'm asking because you're definitely more experienced in this than I am, how can you and I justify to them that this is what we should expect? Because part of me is the moniker of alpha can be used as an excuse for certain things. And I feel like that's kind of maybe one of them. And so, like, where do you see the balance?
That's a good question. I think you're absolutely right that like perception is a big part of this, and I think like this whole phenomenon of crowdsourced development is kind of relatively new in gaming. I mean, it's been going on a few years now, but like in the grand scheme of things, it's still fairly new, and I think we probably haven't figured out, or the masses probably haven't really come to terms with what it means to be involved in the alpha stage of a game, and they're expecting a lot more than what can be delivered. And I think this is true beyond just Star Citizen. I think if you look at other games in this same stage, you'll see the exact same concerns and criticisms. Ashes of Creation is another game I've been following, and you'll see the exact same conversations happening in that community. So I think obviously there's some kind of gap, like in understanding between the consumer and the developers. I don't know exactly what we can do to close that gap. For my part, that's kind of why I got involved in YouTube and putting out content to try to help increase the awareness and understanding. So far, that's all I've figured out.
Yeah,
how to help.
Yeah.
Fair.
I think it's a great question that you asked, because there are these two sides. There's that side that's the development and the company and their roadmap of what they're doing and the work that they're doing. And then there's the community side who's looking from the opposite side and looking for a product that in reality is taking physical time. We've talked about the emotional, psychological, financial sides of all of that for people who are looking forward to a game that has, in its own way, made its backers feel that this is something that we've all been looking for. I mean, it's one thing to say, "Oh, this is just going to be a nice game," but the people who are really in this thing, if supporters, are in it for beyond it being a nice game or a great game. They're looking for something, and I don't want to use the cliched phrases like game changers or things like that, but they're looking at the history of Chris Roberts, and they're saying, some people are saying, we remember when Chris Roberts did a game before, how much it affected the industry. And there are some people who feel that way now. There are other people who just are enjoying what's out there and see the potential that's there. But there are real years going by. There's real time passing by. And it does become difficult to say whether or not the statement of alpha is a cover, right? Or, as some people would say, an excuse, or whether it's a reality. And so I think that people can feel both ways. They, as consumers especially, you may feel like, well, how long is too long? I mean, you mentioned about Liberty taking 12 years, the Throne of Liberty taking 12 years. I could very easily sit here and come up with a lot of reasons why CIG is taking so long. We can talk about they were started from scratch. They were still building a company. They didn't have the luxury of other companies that have an engine in place or have staff in place. But that still doesn't satisfy the fact that 12 years, going on 13 years, has passed. We've had people who've passed away. One of our own team members passed away last year who was very deeply invested into this game. That's a reality for people, whether you want to say alpha or not. And so don't get me wrong. I'm one of the people that leans more toward well, it's an alpha. It's a big horse pill to swallow, but that's what it is. But I also understand those people who feel differently, who are really wanting this game and wanting to play it. Some of them started out in high school and now they've got kids in the house. Things have changed over a period of time. What were you going to say, Fastcart? I know you want to say something.
Yeah, I'm going to say maybe. It might cause more issues than it fixes, but maybe instead of saying alpha, they could just say Star Citizen open development. Because I think, but then the problem because what does open development means, right? Because not many people will understand that. So I mean, because we get some people do feel that alpha is tossed around, and that's been going on since years, way before tonight. So I don't know. Maybe if it's the fact that it's open development, because if it was closed development, if it was normal development, they wouldn't have gotten enough money. But let's put that aside. Maybe, but let's say that they still had $775 million in funding. If it was closed development, they would have to cater to polishing each patch. They can just go patch per patch per patch, or encounter different development stage until they reach a certain point where it's certain points of the game are releasable, or the whole game is releasable. Because I don't know how many years open development has added to the progress of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you and I played Eve, Fastcart. I don't know, Grolo, if you played Eve, SirSilverstar, if you played Eve or not. When I was playing Eve, Eve was broken, but Eve was playable. That was the big difference. There were some features that didn't work in the game, but the game was playable. And then we can talk about this later when we get into the next half of the show. We'll talk about this idea of, what will it take for the game? Because some people are saying we need more content. Some people, we need more features. Some people want to say stability, playability. So, maybe we need to talk about that a little bit later. And Grolo SirSilverstar, we'd love to hear your thoughts in relation to that when we get to it, about what is it that would probably make people feel a certain way. I was seeing something else that Togi was saying. He was saying that semantics aren't the issue. Call it what you want, in other words. The people are more judging the game based upon when they come to it, what are they getting, And I know for some people coming to the game when it's broken, it's not that big of an issue. For other people, it's a big issue, Let's take a commercial break. And then we're going to come back. We're going to pick these guys' brains a little bit more. Once again, thank you to both Grolo and SirSilverstar for being here today, sharing their thoughts on the game. We're going to take a 1-minute break, gang, and then we're going to be right back. And we're going to pick up a little bit more where we left off at. So be right back. Thank you. Hello to our subscribers. If you are here right now, that means you're not seeing the 1-minute commercial. You're seeing us. And we want to say thank you for being here today. Special thanks again to Grolo SirSilverstar for being here. This is our first show back for 2025. We are so excited to be back with you guys. We've got some great topics that are going to be coming up over the next few weeks. We got Squadron 42 next week. And then we're going to have some people coming on the show to talk about how they feel about Star Citizen, and it ain't like they feel like us. They're going to be giving you some real heat. So that's going to be in a couple of weeks. So we're going to be looking forward to having those two shows coming up for the month of January. Again, thank you guys for your subscriptions. Thank you for your support as always, whether you do it through funding, whether it's because you're here with us each week, or whether it's the fact that you just, let people know about our show. We truly, truly appreciate you guys being here. So thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. And we're going to get ready to jump right back into the show. Yeah, make it quick.
And speaking of subscription, thank you for Serious Fun for that 12 subscription for 12 months. We appreciate it.
Okay.
12 months in a row.
So now you can repeat that because I was trying to wait to the end of the clock. Now you can say it again because now we're back on. The commercial was running.
Thank you for Serious Fun for the subscription for 12 months. We appreciate you. So Serious Fun heard because.
Well, yeah, I know, but I wanted everybody to hear it. I need everybody to hear it. I need everybody to hear it. Okay, so we're back once again, guys, with Grolo and SirSilverstar, who are industry developers in software, and they're joining us. And they're also backers of Star Citizen, and they're here sharing their wealth of knowledge with us today. Don't forget, if you have any questions for them, we'll be doing the Q&A toward the end of the show, so don't forget, just click on the little ellipse at the bottom down there, the little eclipse sign, and you can put your questions in, and we'll toss those out to them a little bit later. Let's talk about this next one, guys, the big deal, server meshing. This conversation about server meshing has come up, or this phrase has come up about server meshing, and there are some people who say, yeah, this is a server meshing, and the other people are like, yeah, server meshing has been around forever, nothing new. You guys give us your take on server meshing in relation to Star Citizen. Why is it that what seems to be that big hurdle that CIG has had to get past? SirSilverstar, I'll go with you first on this one, from your understanding about server meshing for you.
So, for me, I think that the whole thing with server meshing is just the fact that we're doing it at the scale that we're doing it. Sure, it's been around, whatever, but everything Star Citizen does is with a mind to just insane ambition and insane scale. Mm-hmm. And so, to my understanding, Grolo, you can correct me if I'm wrong, what we have right now is static server meshing. So all the servers are kind of running at a set, setting or volume or what have you. And then just, it is what it is. What I think is going to be really interesting is whenever we get dynamic server meshing, if that ever becomes a thing, to where if nobody is in a particular zone of the game, there's no server, which then just, it simplifies running the game from a hardware perspective. Like, you don't have as much stuff running, so it probably will make the game cheaper, again, Grolo, correct me if I'm wrong, to run, and I think that'll be where things get much more technically impressive than static server meshing. That's not to say that it's not impressive, but I think that that's where you're going to start getting into what I feel like it's more of like the software black magic stuff that people make things out to be.
Okay. Grolo?
Yeah. Everything SirSilverStar said makes sense. I think server meshing has been around a while. I did a whole video on that like kind of walks through the timeline of meshing and how it's changed over time across all these games and what makes it more impressive in these games. But I can summarize it quickly by saying that if you think about MMOs and large games where you've had server meshing before, the geography that you were trying to represent was always relatively small, right? You had maybe a few islands, a continent here, and it was very easy to like draw lines around these land masses and assign servers to them, and that was your server mesh. Like just the sheer scope of space in Star Citizen means that's impossible. Like, you can't draw lines around all the different areas of space and assign servers to them because you never know where players are going to congregate in such a large vastness of space. Like, you could have one server designated to opening or to hosting like the entire vastness of space in Stanton, thinking nobody's going to be hanging out in the black, like they're going to be on planets, they're going to be over here, and then all of a sudden you have a huge fleet battle erupt in the middle of nowhere, and now your mesh is null and void. So like to Sir SilverStar's point, like the dynamic is where the magic is at, and like the ability to allocate. Basically, what you're doing is you're allocating processing power to whatever region of space needs it across trillions of square miles, and that is a super impressive feat.
Okay.
And I would say that has not been done before.
Yeah, that's. I was going to say, I think that's the thing. Sometimes when people make that statement, people don't. They think that people are being dismissive when they say what they're doing has never been done before, and so people default back and say, "Oh, yes, it has. Server meshing has been done," but it's the way that they are doing it, or what they're aspiring to do, is what's going to make it a bit unique. I've heard arguments about this idea of server meshing and the reality of whether or not there will be this, what we would consider that one shard world, where everybody's on, well, I don't want to use the word shard, but where everybody's on at the same place. I've heard arguments about the physics of it, that due to things such as, even the speed of light, whether it's possible. I'm one of those people that, from my limited knowledge, believes that they can do things regionally, but I'm curious about a global type of scenario. Do you guys see any hurdles? I'm sure there are plenty of hurdles, but are there any that stand out to you in relation to this idea of dynamic meshing for this game in the future?
Yeah, I think the speed of light will be a challenge for a game like Star Citizen because of just the fast-paced nature of combat, where like milliseconds of moving the barrel of a gun matter. There's not many games that have a global shard that I'm aware of. EVE Online is one of them, but if you look at the EVE Online combat, it's much less sensitive to latency than something like Star Citizen, because you're targeting a ship and you're issuing commands And so like any kind of latency can kind of be tolerated, and even the game intentionally will introduce latency as load increases through things like time dilation. Like none of that works in a game like Star Citizen, where just the jerk of a mouse matters. Like, so I think for that reason, we will never kind of grow beyond regional shards.
Okay. SirSilverstar, any thoughts about the bigger picture here that they're shooting for?
I think that we're reaching a point in the technical side of things that I don't even know I would be qualified to speak on. But if I had to take a guess, if you're gonna have dynamic server meshing, I'm just thinking out loud here. Speed of light is a huge issue because the way that I would do it, just a simple design, is as someone is approaching the next zone, once they reach like a certain distance away from the next zone, you start spinning up the server for that zone. But then the speed of light makes it an issue because it's happening so fast. So you run into the hardware issues of spinning up and spinning down things just constantly. And so, what would you do in a situation like that? Would you spin up like 5 zones all at once? And then is that really even reasonable from a hardware perspective? Or at that point, would you just be better off having everything static? So, it's I don't think I'm qualified to even comment on that. It's just questions that come to my mind with the limited knowledge that I have.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a complete idiot when it comes to the subject, so you're doing way better than I am. FC, were you thinking anything in particular about this?
I am what's stupid when it comes to this stuff.
Well, I tried to sound intelligent when I asked the question, but after that,
because I've been following this game development since 2014, and then every so often they come up with something that throws me for a loop. 32-bit to 64-bit conversion. That was simple enough. That was easy. But then it came up with ICAS, and then it came up with SOCs. People may remember what SOCs was about. And sometimes CID would thought these terminology, something. No one would know what that was. As far as I could tell, just from the word. But it comes with the NPC and AI behavior in the game. Then I became Quanta, and now it's StarSim. So I feel like some of us may have gotten an acme degree just by following the development of this game, but it's not even done yet. So I don't know if maybe we can get a master's, maybe we can get a PhD. Who knows? But yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff going on, and I've forgotten more stuff than I've learned. Put it that way.
Yeah. It's good. Good, Rolo.
I just wanted to respond to SirSilverstar there because he was mentioning I think he was alluding to like a player traveling through space very quickly and like the ability, the need to like have a server at every place that they're passing through. And this goes back to your point about like has this been done before? CIG has solved for this not by spinning servers up and down very quickly, but by having the server move with the player in that circumstance, which is another thing I don't think has been done before.
Oh,
that's interesting.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the idea is that the replication server, which is what the player is attached to, is streaming in entities based on the player's location in space. And so like as the player is moving through space, the replication, they call it the replicant, is just changing what it's streaming in. So in effect, the server is moving with the player through space.
Okay.
Which is pretty wild.
That's different from my understanding to it, because I thought that the player was moving from server to server to server.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's one of the.
That's a big thing about the replication layer. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go into this question here with you guys because Serious Fun, who I thought was going to be with us tonight, but unfortunately, I didn't realize he hadn't signed up for the show fastcart, so I thought he was going to be here to talk about this.
I didn't sign up for the show either, bro.
I know your name was down. Your name was down, believe it or not. So
I know, but I didn't sign up for it.
Oh, okay, okay. This topic of agile and lean, and I'm hoping Serious Fun. I know you're out there watching, so please clarify. If I don't get it right, so I don't want to confuse these guys. This came up when Richard Trier was talking about the development and where they wanted to go in the future. And I'm going to read this description to you guys. They have it in front of them, but I'm going to read it to you guys who are watching. What it says about agile is a software development methodology and a mindset that emphasizes flexibility, collaboration, and iterative progress. Unlike traditional methodologies like waterfall, agile focuses on delivering small, functional pieces of software frequently while adapting to changing requirements and feedback. Agile is a transformative approach that prioritizes customer needs and adaptability, making it a popular choice for software and product development. And this came up when Richard Trier was talking about moving into this direction, that they want to be able now to start giving us things and delivering to the community. So Grolo SirSilverstar, I don't know whoever wants to respond to this one, if it makes sense or you can translate it better, or if I'm saying it all wrong, feel free to jump in and give us some thoughts on this with CIG moving into this direction.
I guess I'll take this one. To me, agile is one of those things that looks great on paper but falls apart very quickly in practice. Mm-hmm. Because what agile ends up doing, especially once you start introducing the idea of Scrum, which is also, synonymous with agile, mm-hmm. It turns into meeting after meeting after meeting, talking about doing the things you're going to do instead of actually doing the thing that you're talking about you're going to do. Mm-hmm. But you have to have a meeting to talk about the thing that you're going to talk about that you're going to do, so you can talk about that thing.
Okay.
And nothing really gets done. Mm-hmm. And so it puts these points. Mm-hmm. It assigns points mm-hmm. to certain tasks. Mm-hmm. And so, and the points are completely subjective. Mm-hmm. And so you can have people essentially game the system and okay, well, we got to do all these meetings to talk about these different things that we're going to do mm-hmm. instead of not doing it. Mm-hmm. And so we'll just do these things. We'll just assign high point values to these things that don't really matter. Mm-hmm. So it can look like we're getting something done. Mm-hmm. But it really satisfies the project managers mm-hmm. because we're doing all the meetings. We're making it look like we're getting something done, mm-hmm. but it's just meeting after meeting
and
after
not producing, mm-hmm. and not producing. So, right. Look, Serious Fun, you're out there. So I want to make sure I'm understanding this. We were talking about them moving from agile to lean. Is that right? Because that's how we have it on the sheet: is agile versus lean. That's what they were doing before, and that's where they want to move us toward lean. Is that right or no? I'm waiting on his response in the chat because I can't remember I remember when he brought this up, and I don't remember.
I thought they were they were still on agile.
That's what I'm saying. I thought that that's what they were. He brought it up because he was saying that's what they were saying they were going to change from. Let me see.
No, I think was more my question: what is agile versus lean, or what is agile versus waterfall?
They're right. They're looking at like agile at the moment. Right. Okay. Well, Serious Fun hasn't.
Just echoing what SirSilverstar said.
Sorry, let me interrupt real quick. Okay, we're back.
Yeah, it's back. Mm-hmm.
The screen stopped. But go ahead, you're back now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can relate to what SirSilverstar was saying so well. I think my take on this is very simple. I've been on teams that use all the different systems, mm-hmm. and I've seen teams kick butt using waterfall. I've seen teams do very well using agile. I've seen teams do very well using Kanban, all the different flavors out there. And I've also seen teams that do terrible with each one of them. I think the system matters less than the people. And I think with a good team, you can make any system work, and you can also make any system terrible.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that whatever they're adopting does well for them, or they're able to make it work well for them. I think this is one of the reasons why like we're getting garbage from the AAA studios, and why we need independent developers like Intrepid and CIG to bring us new good games, because I think some of these AAA studios are getting lost in the quagmire that SirSilverstar was describing.
I have to laugh at our good friend Senior Mukul said, when the internet just went out a few seconds ago, he said, Chris Roberts heard you bashing Agile and pulled the plug on your internet. So it's pretty good. Yeah, and it's interesting because there are some people in our chat who are in the software industry, and they echoed what you guys said. They said it could be good or bad, depending, so it is interesting to see that there was unanimous thoughts about what you guys are saying about that. Let's move on to this next topic then, of what we call behind the curtain. I know you guys have just been in the game for a few years, but you've been educating yourselves obviously on a little bit of the history of the development with Star Citizen. Fastcart mentioned this earlier about open development, and is it better to call it open development? And even then, I'd worry about what people want to define as open development. But my question to you is, and maybe you guys know about this or don't know about it, but one of the words that people quite often will toss out towards CIG was about their promise of transparency, that they would make things transparent. And transparency steps into the areas of communication. My question to you is, from your observations, how transparent can CIG be? There are some people who want complete transparency. There are some people who say, just tell me what we only need to know. Some people say they're not telling us enough. Now, we can definitely have a discussion about if they're telling us, how they're telling us things. I would agree in some areas on that. But my question to you is, how far behind the curtain is realistic in a scenario like this? And let me continue to add a little bit more flavor on here for you guys. As consumers and as backers, there's a feeling of wanting to know a lot about the game and knowing about the progress. But as a company, they also have a certain perspective of how much they can share. And what are the obligations of that sharing? Is it 30%? Is it 50%? Is it 70%? Is it fair for them to hold back? We've seen when CIG opened the doors that, like you guys may remember, we used to have our roadmap that was a year-long roadmap. And when we had that year-long of transparency, it caused a lot of conflict. When they reduced it down to 1 quarter, there were a lot of us that weren't happy about it, but since they reduced it down to the 1 quarter, a lot of that stuff that was going on with the 1 year went away, right? There's some people who say, I was fine with the 1 year. I understood things could change. There were other people who said, no, but they promised that by November, this would be in. How far behind the curtain do we get to go as backers? And how far should CIG, because they have to protect themselves to a certain degree, but there is this, I hate using the word promise, but it is the agreement that they made to backers to say that we will be transparent and share things with you guys. So what do you guys have any thoughts? I'll go to you this time, Grolo, on that one.
I'll start by saying I would not want to be in their position. I think the answer is it depends on how much flack you're willing to put up with. I think about like making... even if you're not making a commitment, the community is going to read it as a commitment. And I mentioned earlier I was wrong. I said I was in this field for 24 years. It's more like 30 years, and it took me probably 24 of those years before I could deliver a good estimate. And so CIG is sitting with 1,700 employees, maybe 1,400 of them are engineers. Like, they are getting a avalanche of bad estimates from their engineers, and they are trying to make some sense out of this and deliver some kind of order to us. And so, like, whenever they say, hey, we think we'll be able to have this done by such and such time, the community is going to stamp that on their calendar, and as soon as they miss that date, you're going to have 1,000 videos out there talking about how CIG can't keep their commitments, they're lying, they're doing this. So, like, I don't know, it's a really tough balancing act, and I would not want to do it.
Okay. SirSilverstar.
Yeah, I was going to point out, like, as a software engineer myself, it is incredibly hard to give accurate timelines on when something will be done. I kind of take the Scotty from Star Trek approach because he mentions, I want to say in one episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, one of the crossover episodes, he tells Geordi, he says, always give an overestimate of your timeline. So that whenever you finish it early or you finish it on time, you're a hero. But if you're late, you're the problem.
Yeah.
So I think that CIG could probably do with a little bit of that. I don't know. Like, we can have a discussion about honesty there. Like, I think that there's a bit of questions of honesty there. But I think if the engineers are coming back and saying, this is gonna take us a month, that they should put on the timeline 3 months. Just to be able to give them some wiggle room, such that whenever things inevitably do happen, they're gonna not have as much pressure as what they would have otherwise. And then if they really do it in a month, they're a hero.
Yeah.
Miracle worker.
Yeah.
I think you were looking for.
Yeah. There was go ahead, fastcart.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Not so much for development, but it's somewhat related. Some people have different definitions of open development, and we're about people who say, "Oh, CIG is not open enough." I'm like, "How open do you want them to be? Like, what more do you want?" Yes, communication needs to be better. We established that, but there's some people who want to say, "I want to know everything about Squadron 42 now. Just spoil everything. I don't care," and I think that's a bit much. So I do worry about how much openness would satisfy some people versus others.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There was a game we've talked about on this show quite often, guys. Some of you guys might be familiar with it. In fact, I know SirSilverstar is because I watched your video today on it. Was Star Wars Galaxies.
Awesome.
Galaxies was my favorite MMO, and just recently I got this was last year. I watched a GDC that was done on it, which I had not seen before. Very good if you haven't seen it, SirSilverstar. But one of the things that's interesting was as they were developing this game, the devs told Sony, "We need another year. We need another year." And Sony was like, "No, we're not. You got 2 months," something like that. And that was it. And it put them in a really bad spot. That 1 year from a business standpoint for Sony was unacceptable. But the developers were saying, if you want the game that we really want to be able to put out, we need more time. And we did a show a little while back that talked about when it comes to game development, there are two things that are needed: money and time. And though it's very easy to take the money side of this and say, well, CIG has raised over almost $800 million. But the time factor is something that, is a lot more tougher to give. It's been amazing that they've been able to give that type of money to this project. But do you guys think that, how do you equate time? Time has value to it too. When you start talking about 10 years, and Serious Fun is very quick to tell us this about how there's something magical about the number 10 for people. And once you get past 10, people start feeling a certain kind of way. Grolo, you mentioned this earlier about, the game you mentioned earlier says taken 12 years. Is from you guys' observations and from what you see that they want to do, I know that things can change, but based upon the scope of what they described, is 13 years, when you include successes and failures, extreme, stretching it, about right, should have been done? You guys got any thoughts?
I think they're doing phenomenally well. If you just look at comparisons within the industry, so I mentioned Throne and Liberty was 12 years. You look at Grand Theft Auto 6, not even a multiplayer game. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't think we know much about that aspect. But 11 to 12 years on Grand Theft Auto 6, and the scope of these games is so much less than what Star Citizen's doing. And these games are being built behind closed doors. Something Fastcart said earlier, which we might have glossed over, was that like, how much time does the open development model add to Star Citizen? So even if you're comparing Star Citizen to these other games, without considering the overhead of the open development model, it's already comparing favorably well. If you tack on the overhead of the open development model, now it's comparing extremely well. If I had to guess, just based on how long other games are taking to deliver, like Star Citizen really belongs in the 15 to 17 year category.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay, that's your take. Fair enough. So SirSilverstar, your thoughts, and with successes, failures, everything else, where do you see this thing landing?
I think you make a good point, Grolo. Like the fact that we have all these, massive AAA games that take this long, like it does put it in perspective. I think what makes it such a rub for so many people is because we have it in open development. If this would have been closed development, like people would just be like, yo, when are we getting the next press drop for the game? And it wouldn't be as big of a deal as what we have now that we can see things as intimately as we do. And then you also have to say, like, well, if they would have done this and they would have done that, it would have been done by now, which we can say that all day long. Like, if they wouldn't have rebuilt the game with its own engine, we would have had something finished by now. But would we have had the same truly special, ambitious thing that we would have had? Like, you can just say all of these, well, you should have did this, you should have did that. So in that regard, it could have been done faster, yes. But I don't think it would have been done as well.
Yeah.
And so with what you were saying, Grolo, it does put it in perspective, and I think it's reasonable. I think we should probably be closer to beta, like we can get back to that nomenclature thing again, but I think we should be closer to beta than we are. But there again, that's just should have did this, should have that. Like it doesn't matter with what they've got to work with and the constraints they've got. They are doing pretty well.
Yeah. There's a question. I want to address a question that's in the thing, and it was from Cloak and Bear. It says, how can you compare Star Citizen with how long games take to develop when Star Citizen isn't even finished yet? And I think that's an interesting question. I've heard that question asked before. And I think that the comparison has to do with, for example, the game that he mentioned, GTA 6. GTA 6 I don't know if you've seen recent numbers on the production of GTA 6, but GTA 6 is somewhere between $1 and $2 billion for its development and its release, where we're at 800 million. It's taken just about the same amount of time for development from a company that already has a company in full swing with an engine and staffing and all the other things. And they've been around for quite a while, and Rockstar is still taking the same amount of time. So I think the comparison has to do with when we look at other models of development and we say, here are other games that are being developed, and that one hasn't been released yet, right? You would think that it would be faster since they've done a GTA 5 and a GTA 4, right? But no, it's still taking time because the scope and scale of these games has grown so much. These are not the games that were out 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. These guys are taking these games to another level. And unfortunately, for those of us old guys, I don't know how old you guys are, but for a guy like me, who was back when Pong came out, they used to spend just a few months putting games together. Okay. But I've watched over the years go from months to 6 months to 2 years to 3 years. We kind of hovered in that 3.5, 5 year period for a good while. But then we started creeping up to 5 to 7 years for many games, so as gamers demand more and want more, time also becomes a factor as well as money. Think about that. $1 billion to make a game. That's a lot of cheese, guys. A lot of cheese. Were you going to say, Fastcart?
Yeah. And, back in 2012 or 2014, a lot of people were expecting Squadron 42. Well, I should have started with this. And they're developing 2 games, and not just 1 game. That's the other thing. Sure, it's fun. Put that in chat, and I think that would it should be emphasized. But a lot of people were saying, "Oh, this game should have been out in 2016." If they had came out with a finished game back then, it would not have the scope and scale, or it would not have the scope and scale of what they're trying to achieve right now. Like I wouldn't like that in the presentation for during CitizenCon, that whole in-game thing. I don't see how they would have been able to attack that, or even attach that to whatever was coming out in 2016, because back then they were still using a Crytek. They wasn't even moving towards Lumberyard by then. So the engine would have been a huge factor in preventing some of the stuff that they wanted to put into the game. So a lot of people say, yeah, they could have put out the game sooner, but at what cost?
But let's be specific about what game are you talking about? Because the game that was given dates was what? Squadron.
Squadron 42.
Right. So they could have put out something. Whether we'd be still playing it today might be another story. But I'm saying in relation to Persistent Universe, and I think we need to distinguish those two, right? Yeah. Persistent Universe has always been something that is planned to be around, where the single player game was something to be launched. And CIG, we've always talked about wondering what the documentary will look like in the end of this, right? The fact that these 2 games being ran simultaneously, why it was important for both games to be developed in parallel. And maybe, Grolo, let's talk about that real quick in SilverStar. If you had to try to look through your crystal ball and figure out why was it so important for CIG to develop these 2 things in parallel with each other, is there anything that you see, any links or threads in there that make it make sense to you? Why didn't they just put out Squadron 42 and say, we'll work on the Persistent Universe after we get Squadron out? Why does this thing with stuff has to work here and then we have to make sure they work between these 2 worlds? Why is there any rationale you guys can give us as to why CIG has taken that path?
Go ahead, Silver.
What immediately comes to mind for me is that you can probably build features and ideas and essentially proof of concept things much faster in a single player thing like Squadron 42. Mm-hmm. And then once you have something that works, you can say, okay, well, let's port it over to the Persistent Universe. That's the only thing that comes to mind for me. Mm-hmm. But realistically, I don't know how viable that is. So, what do you think, Grolo?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going on. I think they are building a single platform and assets that can be used in both places, and they're not getting 2 games for the price of 1, but I think they're getting 2 games for the price of like 1.5, if that makes sense, by kind of consolidating the way they're approaching this. It's kind of like, I don't know if you all are familiar with this, but somebody in the audience might be like, web technologies, like, whenever smartphones were first released, people would build an iOS app and they would build an Android app and they would build a desktop app and a Windows and a Mac app. And now a lot of the new apps coming out are just web apps that run in kind of containers on your phone, on your desktop, on your tablet. Like it's all using the same technology now. And I think in a way that's kind of what CIG is accomplishing with its approach.
Yeah. Maverick, just to answer your question, have we genuinely had 13 years of actual game production, or was that the first 3 or 4 years to establish the company while giving the backers something tangible to see and touch until the foundations were built? Yeah, we've talked about that in the past, that's one of the things that we often take into consideration is that CIG had a handful, literally less than 10 people in the beginning working on this thing back in 2012. And over the years, there's been both the growth of the company, growth of staffing, growth of technology, growth of all types of stuff, tools. But there was still this idea of development, and though much smaller in scale, admittedly, and we get that. We also understand there was a situation where there were some changes in relation to contracted companies, how things are kind of, the board was wiped clean a little bit and they brought everything in-house. There were a lot of things that took place in the process of building the company out. But we're using that number of 13 years as just saying, ever since Kickstarter started, right? And we're just kind of using that as a milepost of saying, over the 13-year history of this is where we are. We personally feel that there's been about 9 years of real development, but that's just our number. But we don't have anything behind the curtain to tell us yay or nay of that. But that's kind of why we use the number of 13 for right now. What, FC?
I was going to say, Sandy Roberts has come out and said that the first, until 2015, they were just building the company. So technically, really, it's been like since 2015 until now that they've been making the game. Because like you said, they had Moon Collider, Elphonics, all these other companies trying to help them put together the game, but it just didn't work out. They had to bring everything under one house. So like until 2015, they were building the company, but since then, yeah.
Okay. All right, let's hit this next one here because we're getting near our wrap-up time. We're not going to keep these guys all night, otherwise we're going to have to pay them. Let's talk about you see him come, you see him come, you see him go. SilverStar, I'll go to you first on this one. Last year, around this time of year before, this year, this time of year, we saw staff leave CIG. We've seen it happen, bad has happened, or as there's been a falling out. We realize those could be variables, but could you guys share a little bit about within the software industry? I'm not using the word longevity, but what's the lifespan in developers working in companies? Are there people who stay at companies like we know at CIG, there are people who've been there since the beginning, but is it unusual for people to be there for a certain period of time, or is it something that people should worry about if they see a few names come and go? Grolo, I'll go to you this time. Or I'm SilverStar. I'm sorry, SilverStar, to you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I should probably let Grolo answer this one because my development experience has never actually been in a company. Because since I graduated college, I've been doing solo development for my parents' startups and other things like that. So I never actually had the opportunity to work within the traditional quote, software engineering field of companies and been able to observe this. So what do you think?
Okay.
2 to 4 years is average for a developer working at a company. So if somebody's been there for 11 years, that's incredible.
Why is that? Is it because when you're brought into a job, there's maybe a certain role only that you're doing, and once that role's completed, your contract or your period of time is up? But why isn't there people aren't there to the end, quote unquote, of a project?
Sadly, it's because there's a not wrong perspective that the best way to advance is to leave. Yeah. I've heard that. Promotions are difficult to get, and so people will jump to another company in order to advance their career. And the common advice is every 2 to 4 years make that move.
I was told that at CIG, and I'm not going to say that. I was told that this happens at CIG and other companies, that basically you come in at a certain level, you may move up maybe once, but if there's a higher position like a producer level or a senior level, that quite often those people are in there they're in there for a little while, and so there's no room for upward mobility, and so it's basically some other company is offering that position that you're looking for, and you've gotten some history over here, and you basically, for the money, and everybody wants to live better, they take a different job. Is that pretty much what kind of comes down to sometimes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. What about this idea of relocation? Because we know that CIG has been, they mentioned it last year, I think at CitizenCon, that they were reducing their staff at their LA office, that LA was going to become more about marketing. And we do know that there were some people who were literally asked to relocate and move to Manchester. Is that a big deal? Is that like a thing that happens with companies when they do something like that? I know it's a big decision, for people to pick up their lives and move somewhere, especially if a lifespan in the company is only 2 to 4 years. Is that a reason to tell people to say, man, the most I'm going to be there is 2 to 4 years. I've been living here for 28 years. I'm not moving.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty common, unfortunately. It used to be, so it's kind of like a roller coaster. It's like this comes and goes. Like during COVID, for example, everybody was switching to remote, and a lot of people made that transition to remote work, and they kind of fell in love with it. And here recently, there's been a flurry of activity with companies calling people back to the office, and in a lot of cases, people moved to like more remote areas where the cost of living was better, and they could lead a better life, and blah blah blah. And now the company's calling them back, and now they got to make another move across the country, and But as long as I've been in this field, it has been very common for people to move to the job, whether, they may be living in Boston and, they just landed a job in California. They got to move cross country or vice versa, or New York or wherever. A lot of these jobs have been concentrated around these big coastal cities. And so you kind of have people from all over the country moving. Now, remote work had threatened to change that for a little while, but I think, unfortunately, we're seeing a little bit of backtrack on that. I'm in a fortunate position where I've been working remote for a long time, but so it doesn't surprise me that this is happening at CIG.
Yeah. We've talked about the fact that that red flag goes up, but people come and go at companies all the time. And it's more pronounced, obviously, at CIG. This is an interesting thing in Disco. I don't know if Disco's watching, because sometimes he does. Who knows? But one of the things that Disco made an effort of was talking about how he wanted to bring greater humanity to the game developers, and by introducing us to them and letting them know these are people too, and that they're passionate about their work and what they do. But that has also in some ways created a certain synchronicity, a certain connection with us as backers to people, because we get to know them. We get to hear their voices week after week, sometimes month after month, year after year. And when they leave, obviously that resonates with us in a different way. But the reality is that there are people who come and go at CIG all the time who maybe never get to go on camera that we don't know about, right?
Yeah,
So
they have 1,500 employees. You don't see 1,500 people coming on SCL or IS.
Yeah. So my question is, do you think that also kind of is one of the reasons why we react a little bit? Because we do get to kind of connect with these people a little bit, more than we would at any other kind of gaming. Most other companies, maybe it's the community manager, you know what I mean? And maybe one or two developers. But most of us probably have seen 30, 40, different folks at that company. Not to mention going to a bar citizen or a citizen con where you really get to connect with people in real life, right? A couple of people who I met last year are no longer there, and it felt weird, to know that when I went to Citizen Con this year, I was hoping to see those people, but they're not there anymore, FC, you got any thoughts on that?
Not really. I just wish it was. I just wish it wasn't such a easy clickbait for people to quote unquote journalists to pick on when someone leaves a position, whether it's a high position or a lower position. It's just something that happens in the industry. But I don't know. I wish they would focus on this is normal rather than this is a red flag.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'm back. I lost audio there for a little bit.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Back.
Okay. Yeah, to your point, I don't know if I'm coming in at a different point, but like you were asking about like the connection between us and some of the developers there at CIG. Yeah, that could very well play a part. I think it's interesting that CIG does that. I see this at other companies. It's kind of used as a marketing tool. Like if you can kind of build a connection to a developer at a company, and you can kind of use that developer to promote something that your company is doing. Like I've seen companies use this to promote like some framework they're developing internally, and they're trying to get broader adoption, and so they kind of will promote developers at their company in order to achieve this. In CIG's case, like I don't know what the angle is or why they're doing it, but
whether it's a noble effort, like I said, like Disco's point was that he wanted to humanize folks, that they know these people are real and that they have real feelings and that they passionate about their work, or whether it's a marketing tool. I remember, once again, y'all, I'm going back into the old man clock, 1980s, 90s, Electronic Arts when they first started. And Electronic Arts theme was by gamers for gamers, or for gamers by the gamers, something like that. And when you used to buy their games, on the back or inside were pictures of the developers, and they told you their names and where they were from and blah 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 blah. But there was something that connected, like, oh, these are real gamers. These are real people. They always had a nice pose and a real cool thing. But that type of thing has been used previously in the history of gaming. Later on, they didn't care about who the developers were. It was just a publisher, and that's all that mattered. I like the fact that they've made that outreach to us to connect with them. I like the fact that we can go to a bar citizen and sit there and have a drink with them, or go to a citizen con and take a picture and have a conversation. I love the fact that whenever I've gone, they genuinely seem like they're there, not because they're under contract, but because they actually enjoy being there, which is unique, which definitely is unique.
Completely agree. I think it's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Last but not least, we're getting ready to wrap it up, gang. Final question to these wonderful gentlemen. The live development experience, we started touching into this a little bit just now because SirSilverstar brought this up, and so did Grolo, about this operating in a live experience. I gave this example earlier to them. I've heard actors talk about the difference in performing on stage versus screen. When they perform on screen, they have to be in a different type of mindset because there's no reaction when they're doing performances. The crew can't react. They're looking at a camera. There's a bunch of lights, and there's nothing that they get as far as feedback that comes back to them when they're making a film. But when they're on stage in a theater, one of the reasons why actors love being in a theater is because when they give a performance, they can get reaction from an audience. They can see the way an audience responds, or hear a sigh or laughter or crying. And that gives them a certain type of fuel in the process of what they're doing as far as their performance goes. And my question to these guys is in relation to this, as them being devs. A lot of times they work in closed spaces, 4 walls, nobody's around, they're doing their work. But it's not until their product hits the market that they find out whether or not it was a success. It may have been a great product, but it's not until it's in the hands of the consumer. When you guys look at what CIG is doing with this open development process, and how there's this dynamic of Spectrum and Reddit and tweeting and all this other stuff and all these areas of feedback, give us your thoughts on that, because there are people who have concerns about how does that affect a developer. I'm working on something, I'm feeling good about it, but they don't know the whole picture. And then I go read something and people are ripping it up, but they also don't know, like, this is just a piece of a bigger puzzle. Is that a problem? Or do you think devs have got pretty thick skin and it's like, they'll be all right? How do you guys think that goes? Grolo, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I've never developed in that type of environment, but I would imagine it's a lot like being a YouTuber. You're kind of putting out content, and then you go into the comments. I'm very new to YouTube, but I've heard from many people already that they're like, don't sweat what you read in the comments, and and I would imagine it's a lot like that. I hope, and I would imagine that CIG is kind of aware of this and aware of the impact that it might have on devs, and I'm hoping they have support internally for this. I would imagine they do, but I've never worked at a place like that, so it's interesting.
Yeah. SirSilverstar, what about you? You're dev. Input from folks good and bad.
So I can imagine this is exhausting. Just from so what you're probably hearing most of the time, whenever you go on these feedback forums or comments or whatnot, is the very vocal minority who are just ripping everything apart. And because the analogy that I've always used is that you have the people that are in the forums, and this is for any game really, that are in the forums, on Reddit, in Discords, wherever have you, and they're just completely tearing whatever project this is to shreds. And then you've got the other section of the player base that are playing the game and not saying anything because they're enjoying it. And so that usually the ones that are streaming and saying all these things and just being exhausting are the very vocal minority, because the rest of us are too busy enjoying the thing that you made. But I can imagine that it's exhausting for them to various degrees because you are developing in production. You're doing it live.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a little bit of this myself because I sometimes build some of my tools for Twitch, live. I'll do it live.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get people come in and be like, so we do it this way, right? Dude, this is not going to work. And I'm like, dude, let me cook. So like, and then whenever they see the result of the design that I had in mind, they're like, oh. And then you have people that will come in more reasonably. You're like, okay, I see what you were doing. Have you considered a blank in order to maybe optimize this thing and keep it flexible, what have you? So I think we're in a position with Star Citizen that you have all these people like, don't do it that way, do it this way. And the devs are needing to just be like, yo, let me cook.
Yeah.
And they can't do that, to a degree because that looks bad for the PR. So it's almost like you have to take it with a grain of salt, but at the same time, figure out where the actual feedback is instead of just all the screaming.
Yeah. So to your point, and and guys, we don't want to make it seem like everybody on Spectrum's saying bad stuff. I think that the thing that I'm getting, and I think SilverStar you're saying, is trying to weed through. I'm curious as a developer, if I want to go to Spectrum and hear what people are saying about something. You mentioned about the vocal minority. There are some good comments out there. There are good suggestions, as you just mentioned. There are people who will put things in a very creative, constructive way, or come back with something, as another challenge of thinking about something differently. But the bulk of it, quite often, can feel very negative. It can feel even toxic in some cases. So Grolo was saying this earlier. Is it a situation where companies like this, do they have that type of thing where, there's some filter for these folks so that if they're getting burnt out or frustrated, then they, they're feeling good about their work and then they go read this? Or, how do they manage that as developers? Because they do respond. We do see that many of them will respond to people. Is it just a matter of them being strong enough to be out there? Or if they say, hey, if you can't handle it, don't go out there. What do you think? How do you think that they're dealing with, that open development and that communication from the community?
I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about, like, why do we have the developers coming on the camera and whatnot in order to, like, humanize them? So I think there's two aspects of it. I think that you have both we're humanizing them and we're using it as a marketing tool. And so I think the balance or the dynamic of it comes in sort of with how you get, we're all content creators here, right? So the idea of like your communities, whether we want it to or not, they tend to build what's called a parasocial relationship with you. So like your community feels like they're much closer to you than they might actually be. And so it builds this bond that is most of the time unintended from the creator, but it strengthens the community itself, both in healthy and unhealthy ways, depending on how the creator utilizes it. So I think that CIG, by putting developers on these, videos about updates to the game, whatnot, that they do want to humanize the devs so that whenever, people come in with just their straight vitriol, like they might think twice about what they're doing, which, I mean, it's the internet. They're not going to think twice.
Yeah.
But I think it also is used as a mechanism to build that parasocial relationship between the audience and CIG, not so much the devs, but the CIG themselves.
Yeah.
So, as for mechanisms to help them deal with it, I'm not too sure. Like, to me, you have a point. Like, if they can't handle it, maybe get a community manager to be the face person that, takes the brunt of that hit, and then just have the ones that know they've got thick enough skin to handle it to come on and do that. Because, to my understanding of the industry, Grolo, you can tell me more about this. Like, the industry doesn't really push mental health all that much. They don't give much of that as an opportunity. So, like, I don't see that being much of a venue in situations like this.
Yeah. And it's something I think, I'm thinking about, like, I was looking once Cloak and Bear caught my eye again. Tell developers to stay off social media and focus on your work. Thanks. Okay, Cloak and Bear. Really? First off, we're not talking about them being on social media. We're talking about the platform Spectrum, which CIG puts out there to get feedback, right? And there are plenty of people in the community who want to hear from them. And the question is, how do we, when they go out there to do that, right? People say it all the time. I put something on Spectrum and nobody responded, right? And I'm not talking about other backers, mind you. I'm talking about somebody from CIG. They're looking for someone to say, I put an idea in, or I made a suggestion. And my question is, how do they deal with that? And it's not that everything that goes out there is negative. There are plenty of great comments that go out there. There are times when I've posted things and I posted very simple things, just something very basic. And I've had people rip into me just because I said something just really basic request because my idea was dumb and it was stupid. And mind you, that's me as just a backer. You guys know, let's call it for what it's like. You guys know what Spectrum can be like sometimes. A lot of people say they don't even want to read Spectrum because if they make even the slightest suggestion as a backer, they're ripped into. And my question is, if that's what we're doing to each other, then what happens when a dev has put in months of work into something and they go out to read feedback? And instead of somebody saying, well, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, I think this is kind of this doesn't work. No, they get personally attacked, and then people want to justify that and say they should be able to do it. So let's call it for what it is. We know what Spectrum can be like, but that platform is there so that it's not just for us to talk to each other, but it's also for CIG to be able to go out there and find out stuff. And I think that it's a good platform for that, but I would agree. People have to protect their mental health. And SirSilverStar, you said this, there are plenty of us that need to be off social media. A lot of us need to be off social media to protect ourselves because we have become the thing that we hate in many cases. But that's another story. Did one of you guys want to say something else about that? I'm sorry, I'm going on one of my tangents here. Anybody want to say anything about that? By the way, thank you. We had a couple things that happened. First of all, we hit our goal. Thank you. We had those 10 subs that came in from, who was it?
A whole bunch of people.
Yeah, I know we had a whole bunch of stuff happen. Oh my God, because there was so much going on here. Meathead Militia, thank you so much for the raid of 14 viewers. Thank you guys for being here with us. We really appreciate you sending your loved ones over to us. We're talking with Grolo and SirSilverstar about game development. So thank you that you guys are here. Hope you guys can enjoy the last bits of the show. And to everybody who followed, we saw Nightly Seba, we saw Kerwas, Don Carlitos, thank you for that subprime. Appreciate you as always. Thank you. You guys are awesome. I still can't see who. I know Go Mob did something. Thank you, Go Mob, for your sub as well. Appreciate that. Thank you guys. Thank you all. Thank you. Roast a sign. I didn't see you earlier. Thank you as well. It's good to see you, buddy. Yeah.
I think Grolo wanted to say something.
Yeah, Grolo, go ahead.
Are you good?
It's a good question. Like, how do they support the devs? I don't know, but I hope that there is support in there. I would suspect that it's like on a per team basis, like where if this is something you're interested in engaging in, I'm sure the leaders are making it possible for them. But I hope that CIG, as like on a kind of a global level, is making resources available to these devs to manage it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Okay. All right. Well, listen, let's take a quick look at fastcart. Do we have any questions for these gentlemen? Did anything pop up?
I'm surprised. I guess
Really?
we asked what a question people wanted to answer.
Oh my God. You guys have informed everybody. Jeez, oh Pete, I am totally shocked. No questions.
We answered them all.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Well, thank you. You guys ought to come back every week and do that. Holy smoke. We're going to do that again. Appreciate that. Well, again, before we get into closing out the show, we want to again thank both these gentlemen, Grolo and SirSilverstar. Grolo, please tell people where they can find you. You guys need to follow these two wonderful people. They've got great content on their YouTube channels. Grolo, why don't you share yours?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube. I am youtube.com/@Grolo, GROLO -AF.
All right. And SirSilverstar?
You can find me mostly on Twitch. Twitch.tv/SirSilverstar. You can also find me on YouTube as a gaming channel, so @SirSilverstar Games. And then if you go to just @SirSilverstar, you'll find my software development tutorials and thinking about expanding into more creative ideas, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Also,
I did have one quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
For our two guys. So, would either of you like to work for CIG?
No.
Nope. That answers that question real quick. And nope.
Yeah, I said it was going to be a quick question.
It was a quick question. Grolo, real quick, and I'm asking SirSilverstar the same question. Grolo, if I'm remembering correctly, you got an org, right? Or you're in an org? If you want to throw a plug out for them?
Dropped out, Griff. You dropped out.
I was asking about Grolo having an org, or he's in an org, that if you want to throw a plug in for your org.
Yeah, I would love to. We run an org. Bunch of active people in there. You can find it at Luminous, LUMINIS.GG or unhinged.gg. So Unhinged is kind of like our broader gaming community. We play a lot of games in there. Luminous is our Star Citizen specific community. We've been running that for a while now. And to answer your question, no, I would not want to work at CIG. Not because I wouldn't want to do the work, because I think they are doing some of the most interesting work in the field right now. I would love to tackle that, but I'm afraid it would preclude me from running an org and competing in the verse. I would not want to give that up.
That's fair.
That's fair enough.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah. SirSilverstar, I don't know if you have an org, if you want to share that, but also you do something in particular with your videos. You mentioned it earlier about Twitch, if you want to share that real quick.
Yeah, I don't have an org. I do mostly solo play and just hang out with people in my mostly YouTube chat nowadays. What do you mean as far as
you do on your YouTube page? I noticed that you have a lot of things for people who are on Twitch. You have things to help them with Twitch.
Oh yes. So my @SirSilverstar YouTube page, my main playlist that I have there is how to build a Twitch bot from scratch. So if you want to get into software development, specifically web development, that tutorial will teach you quite a bit, because I try and do it from a perspective of someone that doesn't know anything. And I try and teach the concepts of development as I go. So I'm not only doing the visual aspects of it, I'm doing the design and actual engineering of it, and trying to teach those concepts as I go.
Okay, awesome. And tell them again where they can find that on your YouTube page, right?
So yes, youtube.com/@SirSilverstar.
Okay. SirSilverstar. You guys check them out. Awesome. Okay, let's talk about what we've got coming up next. Let's see, on Thursday, Fastcart. Why don't you let everybody know what's going on with that?
Thursday, we are back with Soul Talk, where we talk about what's going on this week in Star Citizen. We cover ISC, which is on hiatus. We cover SCL, which is on hiatus. But we also cover what's going on this week in Star Citizen and various dev responses and sneak peeks and whatnot. But it's a chance for you, the community, to come in and talk with us about what your thoughts are going on in Star Citizen that week. So come on in, come to our Discord, and give us your thought of what's going on this week in Star Citizen on Soul Talk at 9 p.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. UTC.
So you fill me in here. You've recently grabbed that word dramatically, hiatus. What's been going on with the hiatus thing recently?
Oh,
you said I was on hiatus on Saturdays. You've been just hiatusing everything. What's going on with the hiatus?
Because this is behind the scenes stuff. I was mistaken about what's going on. I wasn't sure if it was a new show coming back with show voices, or it's going to be a complete new show. I just had hiatus.
Oh, just hiatus. Okay.
I know the show is going to be gone beyond, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it is gone beyond, like in the beyond. It is going to the beyond. This is. That's fine.
It's become a fourth ghost.
Yes, exactly. Next week, we are going to be doing, this is a topic that we covered a while back, but we're doing a kind of a 2.0 of this. In Fastcart, maybe you want to talk about it a little bit for next week's show that you guys are going to do. Mm-hmm.
So this next week's going to be Wing Commander 2 Star Citizen. Like maybe some references or inspiration taken from Wing Commander and how that translates into Squadron 42. But I mean, I'll say Star Citizen. I mean Squadron 42. But mostly it's like, our coverage of these Squadron 42 CitizenCon presentation or stuff like that. Because we haven't really done that, but this is our version of it. Because we touch a lot on Squadron 42, but we haven't taken it from this angle yet. So yeah, Wing Commander to Squadron 42.
Okay, so some of you guys who don't know about Wing Commander, this will be the perfect time to get in and get a little education on how we got from there to here. So that'll be next Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Hopefully you guys will be here to join us for that. We'll look forward to seeing you guys here for that. Once again, special thank you, Grolo, SirSilverstar. Really appreciate all that you guys shared today. And we hope to have you guys back real soon. And definitely we're going to bump into you guys in the universe. Keep punching those videos out. We really appreciate. We need to keep that technical side out there for us so we don't get caught up in our emotions too much. I'll keep us balanced a little bit out here in the Star Citizen community. NFC, thank you for being here as well. We are going to send you folks over to our good friend Maiden Ariana, who is in Star Citizen right now. When you get over there, if you like what you see, follow her, let her know that you came from the Soul Citizens. And until next week, we'll see you guys later. And as always, peace, love, and soul. Take care of yourselves. Ciao.